I think I was one of the only few people left on the list who knew the Ediflex.
Okay.
And it was really that kind of a world where I think at that time there was still people that, if you knew the right people, you would probably get a call or whatever. But I was one of the remaining few on that list of Ediflex editors. So
Describe the premise of that show.
Sledgehammer was an undercover cop, and his amigo was his gun, which I think was a .357 Magnum. And I think till this day, there are people that are huge fans of the show, and I think it's New Zealand and Australia, and probably a lot of people that work in gun shops. But it was a whole lot of fun to work on.
What was the premise of the show?
Well, Sledge went out and solved crimes in his own unique way. Like he would go undercover into a prison and stuff like that. So it was a good time.
What were the challenges of editing satirical type comedy like that?
Well, I think there were probably two challenges. One was working on an editing system that today seems primitive, and probably the other was just trying to stay within the restraints of what the network would want, because this was a show that was really glorifying a guy's relationship with his gun. And I think it was probably a lot of times Alan would be very reticent to really abide by what the network was asking for. Like a lot of times we wouldn't do the network notes and stuff like that. So I think that he probably didn't have the greatest relationship with the network and stuff. So I think a lot of it was just trying to abide by what the network was going to want, keeping the comedy alive and making sure that you went for the funniest moments that you could find and all of that. But you had a lot of leeway as an editor on the show.
How did you approach editing the action sequences?
I think one of the things that happens a lot of times is you go into an interview and people look on your resume and they say, oh, you've only done sitcoms, so you can't possibly do drama, you can't possibly do action. And that's not true. I think storytelling is storytelling. And I think one of the things that I've always thought about was that just like in any of the particular art forms that we have, there's a particular style that works for what you're trying to do. And I think you could take a great case in point would be The Sixth Sense and The Matrix came out the same year. And if you had done each of those movies with each other's editing styles, it would be a huge flop. And you look at it and you say, what is it that is the best way to express what the writers and the directors are trying to do for this project? And you'll be able to figure it out. I think there's an appropriate style. And you look at 24 as a great case in point. The split screens on that were exactly right for that show. Wouldn't have worked in ER, wouldn't have worked in The West Wing. And so I think as an editor, one of your jobs is to say, yes, I'm an editor, but what's an appropriate way of expressing this story? And so you approach it, is it an action sequence? Well, that necessitates a certain style. And so you have to just approach the story with not what your preconceptions are, but what's best for that story.
Were there any episodes that stood out
Of,
in your mind of the
of Sledge?
Sledgehammer?
Well, there was one where he comes home and he's doing the at-home video target practice, and he puts a VHS cassette tape into his player and turns on his TV, takes out his gun, and shoots a screen apart. So, and there was another one where he was an undercover cop in prison, and I remember him just going through a whole lot of fun, just trying to act like he was a prisoner, which just didn't go over particularly well. So,
Okay. Why do you think the show developed a cult following?
I think probably because it was just right on the edge, and it was taking something and glorifying it when that wasn't something you were supposed to do. Here was a guy that was kind of a buffoon in his own way, and he had a relationship where his closest contact was really with his gun and his ability to be that cop. It's kind of like Reno 911 today. There's just an edginess to it that I think that it was fun at that time.